ended up knocking on over, I think it was 25,000 doors before I was 24.
I think a second set of eyes is so important, and maybe not to follow it blindly, because I have made that mistake in the past with coaches.
I think we all need people in our life to help us get to where we want to be. Getting into this space was very important for me to continue to be surrounded by good people who help push me in the right direction.
Who are you? What the hell do you do? Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for having me. Daniel Burke-Aguero. I am a creative real estate investor. I'm a coach. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a athlete. I'm a musician. I'm a friend. I don't know, a
I
lot of
love it.
titles, right?
Yeah, I had another guy. He came on. He's a buddy of mine. He's a big multifamily guy. And I'm like, who are you? What do you do? He's like, hold on. He's like, spiritually, personally, but that stuff. But anyway, that's cool, man. Yeah, I wanted to bring you on because, I know when we talked, you're like, why the hell do you want me to come on? I know you're doing lots of cool stuff. I know you put yourself out there on social media. You're in hotels, you're doing deals, you're running a team, you're like balancing all this stuff, just like you said. And I think that's so relatable to people. And being a natural leader that I see you being, I just think it'd be cool to kind of hear your story. And I know it's pretty unique because you told me how you started. And how is that? Like, how'd you start? I remember you said you were like selling books.
Yeah, yeah. You mean like in sales, like way,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, way back,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how'd you get rolling?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I got started in sales, sold candy bars, whatever. A lot of kids growing up. But I would say my true formative exposure to sales when I was 19 years old, I joined the oldest summer internship in North America. It's a company based out of Nashville. And yeah, I sold educational books door to door, 80 hours a week, straight commission for my first summer after my freshman year of college. And I actually ended up doing that for 6 summers in total. So I paid my way through university. I met my wife through it, and I ended up knocking on over, I think it was 25,000 doors before I was 24. And I led a team. I did all this stuff, but it was part of my story. I wouldn't change it for anything, but I have no interest in doing it again.
How many
How about you?
doors do you have to knock? Sometimes you probably have a good day, knock on a door to get a sale, but like typically, like how many doors do you have to knock on to like sell some books?
Yeah, it's a lot of averages at the end of the day. Like you get better at sales and everything, and those averages increase, but it definitely hammered home a lot of the idea of just persistence and keeping going. And you're really just trying to simplify stuff down to controlling the controllables, right? So
Yeah,
for at the time, we sold like kids' books, we sold educational software, we sold like that ACT, SAT prep
yeah,
type stuff, like modern day encyclopedias, if you will.
yeah.
And the math that they said was, if you give 30 demos a day, if you show 30 prospects what you're doing, you'll have at least one, if not two buy. That was the basic math we talked about, that you could really train like a monkey with like a shopping cart to push a set of books around a neighborhood and ring enough doorbells and somebody's probably going to buy. But yeah, it was crazy, man. It's fun.
But the reason I asked about that too is like knocking doors is interesting, and I won't stay too much on the subject, but it's interesting the psychology behind it because you can't just like the body language is huge, right? And you knocked a lot more doors than I ever have. I promise you. You knock on somebody's door and you're up close to it,
Hmm.
like they'll feel threatened. So I'm sure you learned how to like
Yeah.
position yourself, give them space, turn your body, like all this
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. Like starting out in sales, doing something like that.
Yeah, man. I talk to people about this now. It's like my kids. So Jonah is 6, Josie's 3. They're a long ways out from being college age and gainful employment and all that stuff. But man, if they have any interest in it, I will highly encourage. And I tell anybody this: if your kids are open to it, I think door to door sales is such a great way to learn that foundational skill set, communication. There's so much I think that you can gain from it. And there's way more lucrative ways to do it than selling books door to door now. Way better ways to do it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's cool though. I think I've been adjacent to it for a while, part of my story. So I did that. I paid my way through school, ended up doing that full time, recruiting, training college kids as well, built a big organization. Left that, did some mission work, went into like essentially fundraising, K-12 schools, did a little bit of business development. The only time that I've held I'll say gainful employment in my life, I did a short W-2 stint at the nation's largest VA specific mortgage lender. It's a company called Veterans United, and it's actually based here in town. And that was cool for a lot of reasons, but I think that's where it started. So adjacent to it as an LO, did that stuff there, left that and spent the next almost 6.5 years, which is right before this, essentially in like the education space. So I got to work one on one with business owners and leaders, pulling businesses apart and putting them back together. I worked with about 100 different companies and teams and all that stuff over that tenure. And a lot of them were either or branches or even on the corporate level or on the real estate side. Some of my really now good friends are some of the top agents in the country, which is really cool. And then we did some other work in like financial services and insurance and all that. But that was really fun because I got to see kind of, I'd say, behind the scenes of some of the most successful teams out there, what they're doing right and what they're maybe not, but then also the commonalities that it doesn't really matter what the industry is. A lot of top people are wired the same way, and a lot of top people also struggle with some of the same things. And at the end of the day, is what we've talked about. I think we all need a coach. I think we all need help. I think we all need people in our life to help us get to where we want to be. And fast forward, we can probably talk about that too. Getting into this space was very important for me to continue to be surrounded by good people who help push me in the right direction.
Yeah, even a second set of eyes. I run across, I know so many people. Like, I'm a network person. Like, I love interacting with people. And so I know people from early starts to the most experience you could think that you see everywhere. And the most experienced, like, names, they want a second set of eyes. It might not be because they don't know, but they'll tell you, like, they don't know everything. Like, I think a second set of eyes is so important.
Yep.
And maybe not to follow it blindly, because I have made that mistake in the past with coaches. Have your own opinion, but their perspective will usually spark something. And if it doesn't, there'll be one nugget that makes the turn. Just one that just makes a complete like 180, what's not been working. So I think it's huge.
100%.
Yeah. One other thing is, I got to backtrack real quick. You were an LO. Did you have to have a license back then when you were doing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was an LO when you didn't have to have a license. Like when everything crashed.
Yeah.
I was slinging all sorts of
Yeah.
loans.
Yeah. All the ninja loans, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool, man. So what does your real estate business look like these days?
Yeah. Went full time in this space January of 24. So we're right at about a year and a half. Spent the majority of the first full year really just wholesale. So just assignments. We did some, and this is something we could unpack too, but we did a little bit of a land development. So we did a couple small things. We did one rural subdivide, but the majority of what we did last year was residential assignments. We added in novations. We also do some creative stuff, but really primarily what we're focused on right now is building the team, building the machine on the residential nationwide side. I really like the idea of just being a gap to serve people who are in situations, right? And to be able to be that creative tool that looks at it a little differently, that's not just saying, hey, we're just going to lowball you and hope you say yes and see if we can flip the contract to an investor, but rather saying, how can we look at the full picture and see where can we serve the seller, where can we help, where can we make money? Because obviously at the end of the day, we're a profitable business, right? I want to impact the lives of our team members as well as our own, and that requires profit. But I don't know, I really like the idea of working from multiple angles to find solutions. I think there's something in my brain about like problem solving and not just dealing with the same thing every day that I really enjoy.
The hardest part with that mentality, because I have it too. It's really great because you can see the different angles when you're on the phone with these people. And if you can't, you're going to try it and you're going to learn the different angles and then you're going to get
Right.
better at it. That's the positive, and you're going to make money while you do it. The
Yep.
negative that I've experienced, at least, is there's only one of you, right? And not
Yeah, it's hard to be duplicatable.
right. Not
Absolutely.
everybody is wired that way.
Mhm.
They might be one track. They might only be able to do novations or single. So then you're like spread this thin and nothing happens, right?
Yeah.
Maybe one thing happens. Or it's such a balancing act. So like,
Yeah.
dude,
We even went to some of that already, right? I think when I first started growing the team, I was saying, hey, these are I'll call them like five, right? Wholesale, novate, assign, like a creative, an owner finance or a sub two. Here's a wrap. There's all these tools in the tool belt. We could even do a listing referral. There's all these options. But yeah, I mean, like when the concept like a confused and frustrated prospect never buys, the same thing with like a confused or spread too thin team member, good at everything, good at nothing, however you want to phrase it. We really just started simplifying and saying, listen, like our primary focus is to drive people towards a novation at
Yep.
the like that's how we're doing it, right? And we've landed on a couple where hey, you know what? It's going to be an assignment and that's okay. Or we have to pivot to an assignment. That's okay. But we just keep simplifying and saying we want one talk track. We want one focus. We want to discard rather than take on opportunities that might work, but are really just diluting our back end now. It's like
Yep.
if you lock up a contract now, me and Kelly or like some of our other team members, like we have to spend our time trying to figure out this thing that we just never do. I'd
Yep.
rather just hand that off and say, hey, Mr. Guy, I know you specialize in wraps or in sub two. Please go get this done, and I'll
Yep.
just take a smaller piece of the pie.
Yeah, I love it, dude. And I know it's probably hard. Like from what you've told me, that's probably
Mm-hmm.
like a difficult thing to come to because you could
Mm-hmm.
probably solve those problems, but you
Mm-hmm.
can't be on every call.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
commendable. I like that you
Mm-hmm.
picked one route. And
Yeah.
I like Novations. I know a lot of people hate on them and we've talked about it. My biggest deals this month, like are
Mm-hmm.
Novations. Like huge,
Yep.
like big deals. I
Yep.
don't got a dispo on. I got a badass realtor that's this my time's freed
Right.
up. My
Yep.
wholesale deals are like small, this month. Now that's not always,
Yeah.
but you
Not all. Yeah. But again, I think it's the thing I like about him specifically. And, when Rich was on the other day, I think there was a lot of what he was saying that was really affirming to how we're currently operating. And I don't know, it's just you're able to serve. I guess the way my brain goes to think about why I like novations maybe over wholesale to make it make sense for an investor, the investor has to have a certain profit margin. Typically, most investors want to be at 75% at least, if not lower, which I get it. When we flip, we like I want to make money. I get it. There's a risk and a capital involved. But then if I'm assigning that, I then have to have my fee lower than that, minus the repairs, minus the stuff. When I go to look at deals that I want to buy to flip, I'm more conservative in running my estimates. And so what I feel like ends up happening, not every time. I have some buyers that we don't deal with that, but you end up almost being pushed in from both sides where I want to give the seller as much as possible. I
yeah,
also want to get a deal done. I also want to make as much as possible, but then my investor is trying to make as much as possible. And I don't know. I think we've got a couple investor buyers that we built some really good relationships with last year who I've sold now multiple deals to, who don't play the grind us down on both ends game. And they're just good people and they get it. And they're like, listen, we'll make money on this and it's fine, but I'd rather what I told his name's Joe in Vancouver. He's one of my favorite buyers. I told Joe, I go, brother, I'd rather sell you 10 deals this year for 10, 15K a pop than one or two deals for like 30 to 40.
yeah,
Like, yeah, build that long-term relationship. And now because of performing time and time again, Joe's going to be a private lender for us on one of our next deals. So I'd rather build a relationship-based business on the assignment side and just work with a smaller group of really good buyers.
yeah. I like that, dude. And Uncle Charles is coming on today. And the reason I mention that is there's another way to look at it too. Is he calls them? I don't know if this is an official term, but that's what he
Mm-hmm.
always calls them. So it always rings in my mind this way: are
Mm-hmm.
equity listings. So you have a deal that doesn't fit any box. You tell a homeowner, "Hey, look, we're not a realtor. If we get permission, we're going to put it on the market. We're going to target investors, but on the market. If not, we got to beat you down to here." I don't know if y'all
Yeah.
have done any of those, but they,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Just essentially a net
yeah,
wholesale, but on the market. Yeah. Yep.
yeah. It doesn't fit any box, but it works. Everybody's open. Like people do it
Mm-hmm.
wrong. That people don't know their
Yep.
properties going on MLS and stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's the thing that I find really interesting about this space specifically is because you're a licensed realtor, right? And so there is a process to go into and get that. And granted, I'm not going to say I don't think it's a very high barrier of entry, but there is a barrier of entry.
yeah,
But man, wholesale is just, I'm grateful for the regulations that are already starting and that will continue to come in because it's already the Wild West. And so, unfortunately, there are a lot of bad actors out there. And when you operate in integrity and transparency, ethically, honestly, like it really stands out. Like to be the adult in a room full of children, it earns a lot of trust with sellers. It's cool.
It's actually making it look like difficult as hell for like people that are transparent. As well as I do, you get on the
Mm-hmm.
phone, they told me, and you're like, I promise they can't do this because this or that. It's just, damn, there's so much
Yep.
noise. It's hard for these homeowners to filter because they're not the expert.
Yeah. And again, like as much as we say, hey, we're transparent. Hey, we do what we say we're going to do. Hey, go look at our Google reviews. Hey, look at all this stuff. It's like there's also other companies out there who've manufactured those same things. And yeah, I mean, it's a game of, I think this is again another interesting thing to consider is the advent of AI and everything that's coming in is people are talking about replacing and all this stuff. And I think we're going to keep moving the needle on what's possible. But at the end of the day, you have to get on the phone, you have to build trust, you have to have that connection, especially if we're going to be making offers that are lower than our competition
Yep.
because we're not trying to play that game. So,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're just being straightforward with it. What, I guess I didn't go into this, but what
mm-hmm,
formula
sure.
are you using to calculate these novations?
Yeah, I would say our like the basic one, it's part and parcel what Rich talks about. It's current market value, 90% minus assignment.
Yeah.
Now we're not as stringent on a 30K number. Listen, if I can only make $18,000 on a deal, but I know I'm going to make $18,000, I'm going to take a check for $18,000 all day. But it is again, it's everything. It's a more holistic picture, I think, is that if it's not the as is in 60 days or less, 90% minus 30K fee, then there's got to be some other aspect to it where I feel really good that even though we're walking into it only at maybe a 20 or a 18, like, man, our current market value is 30K below what we think the actual number is. This will get sold fast or something like that. But yeah, I mean, we try and do it that way. There's been a couple where we didn't make money because we started the process too low. And so learned that lesson and moved on.
That's kind of why I say stick to the numbers. But because like when we look at our HUDs, generally all of the fees and everything, realtors closing costs are about 8%. But we
Mm-hmm.
keep
Yep.
the 10% because we never get a full price offer. So
Right.
we get a
Right.
deflection.
Or if you do get a full price offer, concessions, there's always something. Absolutely.
So we have that 2%, and then that 30K rarely hits 30K, even though
Mm-hmm.
we you
Yeah,
know,
sure.
sometimes it goes over, but it's usually under. Just
Yeah.
full transparency.
Yeah, we're closing one at the end of this month, and we got a full price offer. It's great, but they did ask for a seller credit for closing costs, so that takes the spread down. Then, as soon as we got into it, the sewer line needed, I think, a clean out, something else in repair, and then there's some other aspect. I think it's $6,000 in total that we'll spend on it, but our net is going to be close to 30. But again, we're below 30, but that's
Yeah.
because we started with a 38 buffer and we've just been slowly chopping it down. And yeah, again, like that's just very normal. That's what happens.
Here's another cool thing about that is you
Mm-hmm.
probably don't have to come out of, maybe you do, but you probably don't have to
Mm-hmm.
come out of pocket with that 6 grand. You probably can credit it to the title for title to put it on the HUD and then take it out.
Yeah.
How y'all are doing it?
Yeah, it depends, man. So I think that was actually something that so Rich said it the other day and he said, man, I'm totally okay spending $5,000 to make 30. And I think that was something that coming from the world of assignments, we're not spending anything. There's
Yeah.
no money. It's just flipping a piece of paper. That was something that was I had to wrap my brain around for a second there, the capital outlay or the risk. And I'm in a couple other groups and there's just some really big dogs that I had that same conversation with. I'm like, what does that risk outlay look like? How are you guys funding it? What's the security? How do you? And he's like, man, at the end of the day, like if you're super confident in your numbers, if you've got market feedback, if we're at a certain stage in the process, like this deal is pretty likely to close. It's never guaranteed, but like the further along you get, the more comfortable you can be putting out some of that money. Now, that said, let's keep it as low as possible. You know, Rich
Yeah.
said his target's 5 or less. I'd say we're in the same boat. We've got one right now in Oregon. I think actually I commented on somebody's about this. I just bought a car on Facebook for $2,000, but it's because I'm going to make 40. And I'm
Yeah.
like, and it hasn't closed yet, but probably should based on where we're at in the process. And if it doesn't, I'm only out $2,000 and I know I can essentially sell the contract other ways. Like we'll be fine. But we're not going to spend 10 if we're only going to make 12.
I guess what I meant to, just to clarify, if
Mm-hmm.
anybody's listening, yes, I'm okay with spending capital. But what I like about being under an actual contract, like doing an ovation and having an actual closing,
Hmm.
up is if you talk to a lot of these service companies.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, we
Yes.
try and do the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wherever
Yeah.
we can, I want to spend no money or credit it or push it or have the invoice be due at closing 100%. Yeah. So, of the one in Kansas with the sewer issues, it's about a $6,000 spend in total. Of that, we've spent, I think, three, and the other three is being credited at closing.
Yeah, and I like for people to know that because so many people ask, they might not have the money or they got a good
Hmm.
deal and they want to partner. And I'm like, man, I'd love to take 50% of this. But like straight up, have you talked to the service company about we can do
Hmm.
that? Yes. I'd love to take 50% of this deal, but you
Yeah.
can,
I don't have to. Yeah.
yeah, they'll let you do that.
Mhm.
And another thing is with these, I haven't had to do this because I mitigate risk just like you.
Mhm.
There's always a possibility that you could put a lien on the property if you did have
Mhm.
to spend some money.
Yep. We have another one of those right now. Yep.
Yeah.
We have one in Vermont, and we did put the money into the property because we had to get it sold to get it on market. And then that contract fell through. So we have a lien on the property, and the seller was aware of it. And when it stopped moving forward, and I was like, "Hey, I need you to sign this." He's like,
Yeah.
"Totally get it. You need your money back. All good." So
Yeah.
it's part of it.
What's the plans with that one? Do you think they'll sell it down the road or?
Don't know. Thankfully, again, it wasn't a crazy amount, but again, it was a learning experience. We got paid in experience tokens on that one, and eventually we'll get made whole when it does sell. It just may be a bit.
Yeah. Cool, man. Where can people find
I guess social media. Yeah.
you?
I'm sure
What's your
you'll tag me
handle?
on stuff,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
just my name, Daniel
All right,
Burke-Aguero,
cool.
D Burke-Aguero. But
Awesome, man. Well, thank you again for coming on. It's cool.
yeah, man, thanks for having me. Yeah. Yeah. If you're considering or thinking about joining Wholetails, I'd encourage everybody to give it a shot, man. It's great.
Hell yeah. Appreciate
Yeah.
that shout out, dude.
100%, man. Yeah, I always appreciate how responsive you are. And yeah, as someone who asks a lot of questions, I always appreciate it. I've been in a lot of different rooms with a lot of different coaches and people, and we kind of talked about that too. And I think there's something to be said for people who are still responding to their own stuff in a timely manner.